Follow me. Here we are in my observing tower. From here I can observe this, what in German is called das Jammertal der Menschen, the pitiful mankind. I can observe from here. I have here views, a 3-channel view, which can spot and watch all locations everywhere in the world. Follow me.
We have very profound disagreement over the requirements of democracy for information. He seems to feel that total control by the president and of information and secrecy and the ability to lie on the basis of secrecy is necessary for democracy. I think it's the death of democracy. And I would say that given the ability of our government to deceive the public almost indefinitely and to lie safely to them, gave us a 30-year war in Vietnam and a war in Afghanistan that is now 20 years and hasn't ended. And I would say that whereas this secrecy, if unchallenged, is the death of democracy, that unauthorized disclosures are the life's blood of democracy, and they're essential. So we have a profound disagreement on that. But in this country, everybody has a right to their own opinion.
Yes, I agree totally with you, because I think that I never experienced anything in my lifetime, and nothing from what I know in history where lies were helpful in anything. I mean, lies always start either wars or deceive people, like mass surveillance, what Edward Snowden revealed, or I don't know, it never leads to anything good. So I don't know the arguments for it. It's
no, in the article, it occurs to me, here's what he's saying. He says, secrecy, as everybody knows, is necessary for a state in diplomacy. Now that's dealing with an external actor here, isn't it? He doesn't come right out and say secrecy from one's public is essential. Or you could just as well say, everybody knows in diplomacy, lies are essential in the process of bargaining. The old statement, which is not pejorative, the diplomat goes abroad to lie for his country. Well, how about lying to one's own country, which is what they also do?
Yes.
Is that really also necessary? If you have the secrecy unquestioned and unchallenged, you will have the lying. It's hard to find examples where that really has a positive result.
Yes. Do you think that I was talking to Yanis Varoufakis some weeks ago, and we talked about what Julian Assange is also fighting for, because of course everybody is now talking about press freedom concerning him, which is of course a topic, but he's also always been a fighter for transparency, total transparency for governments, companies, and the powerful in general, not to be mistaken with privacy of people, which should be separated from it, I think. Also, when this journalist that you just quoted says, or the one who wrote the opinion piece, everybody knows. Yes, but it's a difference of private secrets and a difference of people who are in charge and in power, So anyway, we were talking about Julian's fight for total transparency. And then it's occurred to me that I think that when we really imagine total transparency, it is a very revolutionary thought, actually, because it would change so many things. It's even unthinkable. It's like utopia, And do you think that, I think what may be increased with digitalization and the internet is the ability to keep secrets, because it's much easier to, find things out in a way. And do you think it is too utopist, or can we imagine a world where total transparency will be normal?
Not entirely, because there are conflicts in the world. We have to go back, take the Second World War. I happen to think that's the one war that I am a near pacifist, but not a total pacifist, because I grew up in the Second World War when I was 10 to 14 years old. And looking back on it, I'm not relying on my adolescent attitudes. I think it was right for British anti-aircraft gunners to fire at German bombers over London, and for British Spitfire fighters to fire at German bombers and prevent an invasion of Britain. And I think to look for a successful, though very bloody, defense, in contrast to France, which was unsuccessful, or other countries, the Russian soldiers who were fighting for a tyrannous regime, Stalin's, but nevertheless for their fatherland or motherland, Russia, were right to direct lethal fire at German tanks that were coming through. And I am not impressed by, I'm just not persuaded by pacifists who say there is no example of lethal violence that is justified. So I think that was justified. And by the same token, in the process of that, you have to say, yes, there were secrets that were worth keeping. The exact timing and place of the Normandy invasion, for example, was worth keeping, and as a secret. Now, an irony is that necessity expired within days after the landing, of course, and they knew where it was. For some days, by the way, there's still a question, sorry. Oh, sorry, Mitch, I didn't get back to you. I'm in an interview now, and I will get back to you very shortly, okay? Yeah, okay, bye, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. No, I'm just saying, actually, the millions of pages or thousands of pages about the Normandy landing were probably kept classified for decades, with no justification. Just once they're stamped secret, they tend to remain secret. Nobody puts them out. And of course, that was not necessary. Coming back to total transparency, for example, the government violates the privacy, as Ed Snowden showed, of practically every American, and to a degree, every human, every German, for example, very specifically, the BND and others under American tutelage violates the privacy of every German. And with they were even subordinated in that to the Americans after the Second World War for a long time. Now, that stuff is kept secret. It's the private lives, the communications. Should that government file of everyone's private lives be transparent? What happens to privacy then? What if, in other words, you had the digital file of all the overhearing that the German BND, let's say, has had of everybody in Germany? Well, it's all secret. Should you put it out? No, I would say. Now, a difference here is that's not self-evident, because I think, I don't know how Julian would answer that exactly, but I have asked that question of people quite close to Julian, who, as far as I know, share his views very much, and they have a somewhat different view of total transparency. Yes, put it out. No, I don't agree with that. There are limits to how much transparency you can do, and take people, members of the Bundestag, members of Congress and so forth. Can they really always say the same thing to every audience and be elected? I don't think representative politics works that way. And people who think about anarchism and totally cooperative regimes, whatnot, with no representation, I think that is utopian and not in the best sense. So the truth is, I actually feel politicians cannot help from mislead various audiences as to what they think. They can't tell every audience their same beliefs and their same. They have to collaborate. They have to cooperate. They have to get a constituency. At any rate, whether to legitimize that or not, it's better than the alternative of total authoritarian government. Less bad, I think, and it's just part of what you'll get. And you're never going to get total transparency is not going to occur in a human group. That's not the way we operate.
Okay, very interesting. But yeah, maybe at least there should be at least some mechanisms in the whole process which keeps them at least from lying too blatantly, you know.
Or
like,
have a chance that they can't lie with total or even great reliability, as they can now. Now their secrecy system works all too well, and probably in every country. I don't know any country there isn't excessive secrecy. There's some that have much less than others. Iceland has good laws on this, and others. So the countries do differ, but and some are worse than others. But we need more whistleblowing, much more, not less. And the balance between secrecy and information is not an appropriate balance. It's heavily weighted on the secrecy and lies. And I think we should be less tolerant. Now, I've sounded as though I'm tolerant of politicians, you know, for lying or concealing and so forth. Well, I'm only saying that compared to total transparency.
okay.
But I do think that they should be held much more accountable, both officials and politicians, when they are found to be lying. And that's all the time. But usually it's forgiven. It's not a big issue. It should be a bigger issue.
Hierarchical power structures, they kind of, I don't know, they make people either too passive or too afraid, or I don't know, what is it in the end, or what is then the difference between a person like you who actually did it, you know? I mean, you revealed everything. Chelsea did too, and Edward Snowden, but it's so very few of people who do that. I don't know.
Very few. And now, Angela, what you're saying about Germans was a cliche in America when I was growing up during the Second World War and afterwards, which is that Germans are very different from us. Germans are very obedient. Germans follow authority. They want authority. They feel no responsibility for carrying out the commands of their authorities, whatever those commands are. And that was a caricature of Germans. And after all, in the Nuremberg trials, it was not permitted to be an excuse, which they always said, we were only following orders. The reality that I've come to realize is that is not at all only a German trait. Americans are not significantly different from that, despite our self-image on that. Much experience has shown me that Americans are as prone to do that, essentially. There may be differences, but they're marginal differences. They're not very significant. And the willingness to follow orders or to keep your mouth shut, don't make waves, was true during the Vietnam War and since, and in the nuclear area. And it's true in other countries. Not to go into it too much, but you know, Stanley Milgram's experiments, if you know those, of getting volunteers who come in for an experiment to deliver what they come to believe are lethal electric shocks to a subject who is actually a shill, actually, a collaborator. And they will do it when told you must do it. The experiment requires you to do it. Continue, please continue. With all reluctance, they continue pushing the buttons, even when they have reason to believe they are maybe killing the person involved. Now, these extraordinary people couldn't believe these when they first came out in 1961. But the fact is, these experiments have been done all over the world. And there are small changes, but they're insignificant. Maybe the Germans are a little bit more prone, but not significantly more. And so you go all over the world and you get this. It isn't even just from men. The difference with women is that the women feel more anguished at what they're doing. They cry, they feel upset, but they push the buttons at the same rate as the men.
Incredible, yeah.
And so there's a human aspect to this of to get along, go along. We learn at literally our mother's knee or breast. We are a species that has an extraordinarily long period of child care. We can't, I was just reading the other day that a fawn, a little deer, can walk within minutes after it's born, after it comes out of the mother. Humans have to be cared for decades, really, in particular for years. And during that time, they're totally dependent. And I think they believe they pretty much carry that through life. Don't stray from the herd. Don't allow yourself to be ostracized and lose your support and your connections. And that makes them terribly vulnerable to being led over a cliff. And that's, as I say, we are on a road to hell right now, and it's paved with intentions of all various kinds, but they're the kind of intentions, as I say, that lead to hell. When I say hell, nuclear winter, well, a very cold hell, like Dante's ice regions, and climate change, literal fiery regions, basically uninhabitable heat. And that's facing us now in a way that no generation of humans has ever been faced with this before imminently.
Yeah, that's true, and it's horrible. And but you now said that people are willing to listen to orders. That is one thing. But what is also become very predominant, because I also realized that there are so many of these conspiracy theories and stuff, and people believe all unlogical stuff, I mean, there's a growing number of people who doubt climate change. And
growing, would you say? That's growing? I would have liked.
Yeah, it is growing. During the pandemic, it was more right? and more, They don't believe that the virus exists. They don't believe that climate change exists. And it became even a political thing. I mean, okay, there are clear nut jobs among them, but more and more it is really seriously discussed in newspapers if there even is climate change, And so what is your explanation? Why do people tend to believe conspiracy theories?
Of course, one element is that it's true their government has been lying to them very consistently, decade after decade. Mm-hmm. So, whereas what Trump calls fake news is generally fairly realistic, but what he denounces. But there is a lot of fake news from our newspapers, and always has been, and from our leaders. But as you say, these conspiracies go well beyond that. I don't know what we perceive in the United States more clearly in the last year than I think ever before is the deep and wide persistence of racist categories of racism. Every American knows we used to have slavery in the South, but I don't think that they, including myself now, they recognize at all how the persistence of a caste system, as in India, where African Americans are, if not the lowest caste, they are even below that, like the Dalits, the untouchables, below a caste system. No intermarriage, fear of rape, fear of impurity by any, engagement with them and so forth. And that has been, in other words, that attitude did not end with the end of the Civil War. The next 100 years have to be seen that America was an apartheid regime in the South, but in particular, but also in the North to a lesser extent. And we didn't face up to that. So it's become revealed. Along with that, a very large proportion are what psychologists can call authoritarian personalities who want cling to authority and see things in very black and white terms, no ambiguity. So conspiracy theories give them an answer to uncertainties, where in a period of uncertainty and change, some people, a very large number of people, want to have certain answers, and the cranks and demagogues come along with certain answers and say, this is the way it is, this is the explanation. And they cling to that. Other people are more skeptical. But it's a different personality to a large extent.